Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our Samurai 50, where we come to you every week for 50 weeks. That's why it's called 50. I think we're more than halfway through. We started this last spring during the pandemic. And Alex, can you talk? Can you say hi?
Hello, can you
Okay,
guys hear me?
I can hear you. So we're really, really excited. So each week, we are committed to bringing you inspiring individuals. These are individuals or, small businesses, solopreneurs, entrepreneurs, medium-sized businesses of all kinds. And our intent is to really feature and highlight and showcase inspiring stories, motivating stories, and people that are actually succeeding and continuing to try and succeed despite what we're all going through. So this is a different guest. This is an entrepreneur of a different kind. And I'm really, really excited to bring Alex Hughes to our show today, to the program. And Alex is going to tell us all about her journey as an entertainer. Very different, yet still a small business, still an entrepreneurial journey. It's quite different than any of the other guests that we've had on. So welcome, Alex. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me today.
This is going to be fun. I'm super just fascinated by the creative mindset and creative people, and I'm so drawn to people that have that skill. I have a bit of that, but nothing like what someone like yourself has, and just creative people in general. So Alex is a Alberta, born and raised here in Calgary, and she is an Alberta country artist. And she has a long, long, long history of here in Calgary, in Alberta, and even outside of the country in pursuing her dreams. And she has been pursuing this since she could barely walk. Okay, so many, many years. Because as you can see, she's a fully grown adult now. And so picture this beautiful woman as a little toddler, figuring out that this was her love and her passion and her dream. So Alex's style is best described as a combination of Leanne Rimes, Miranda Lambert, with a touch of Rihanna. And this is where you get those popped bass R&B runs that I love, and so many people do now. Currently, that's sort of a trend and something that we're hearing more and more. And really, this to me, like you epitomize and sort of personify girl power.
Aw.
And I feel like we all need more girl power. The more, the better, and I'm not the only one that has that opinion. So, the girl power theme is just so relevant right now. And, we have lots to talk about here. So let's dive right in. So, she's a super passionate songwriter. And this is where that really creative process comes into the entertainment business and to being an artist. So it's one thing to be able to have a great voice and to be able to sing, but to be a songwriter is a whole different ballgame, a whole different realm. Alex saw more than 45,000 streams on Spotify in 2020. So during a pandemic. So some good things can come out of it. And she has a feature on Spotify, New Music Nashville editorial playlist. And that's a big deal. I know that's a big deal to get on that list. So Alex, there's a journey for any entrepreneur, for any person pursuing a dream, pursuing what they really want to do, what they're passionate about. So tell us about where that started for you and what that looked like for you.
Sure. Yeah, so as you were saying, I started from a very young age. So I can remember as early as 3 and 4 years old getting asked to sing a little song at, my grandparents' house in the living room. And, getting older, I went into kindergarten and I was in choir and I loved that. And that kind of turned into, having a solo in the show. And then right when I was around 7 years old, I entered my first singing competition. And that's kind of where I fell in love with the stage and performing. And, my first time performing in front of a real live audience that wasn't just, family, friends, or schoolmates. And I ended up actually winning the whole contest. And I learned, I could kind of get some free swag out of this. I loved the stage. And from there, I guess the rest is history.
Wow. And so winning a competition at 7, now we kind of understand what that can do for a person's confidence and career. But at 7, it was just pure, I love this. I love the feeling and everything that came from that when you're in front of an audience that's not mom, dad, and grandma cheering you on.
Totally. Yeah. And sometimes I wish I could go back to that because there was no pressure, you know, and I wasn't as self-aware. It was just about how much fun it was.
Yeah, how much you love to sing and perform
Yeah.
and take that all in. So when you're that age, and maybe this is something you're acutely aware of now, or maybe not, when you're that age, do you have a vision of what this is actually going to be? Like you're in the moment, you realize at 7 you love it, but you've got this competition bug now.
Right.
And so do you have a vision at that time that says, this is what I want to do when I grow up?
Oh, I love that question. You know, I don't think I really thought about it that early. I don't think I, at that age, was fantasizing about performing on big stages. I just truly loved it.
Mm-hmm.
But I think as I started to get older was when I realized that I loved it so much that I couldn't see myself actually doing anything else.
Interesting. Yeah. And so here is this becomes who you are, right? Part of your being. So then you have to start thinking about, as you're doing this out of love and passion, you start to think about it as a life, as a career, as a business, right? So those are very, very different things. And I can imagine at some point during that journey, you start having to think that way. It's not just about the love of the art itself, right?
Yeah.
So
and I think it's been a huge adjustment thinking of it in that way, but in a way it's healthier too, because you know you're putting yourself out there as a business and kind of selling your music and yourself as the product instead of it's so raw to be sharing these things and this creative energy. So I actually enjoyed the flip.
Interesting. I never thought of it like that. So sure. So you're not taking the I guess the critiques and the criticisms in the same way as you would if it was pure artistry. When it's a business, you're able to go, yeah, agree with that. Don't agree with that. Here's where I can, go down this path instead with business in mind. So very interesting perspective.
Well, I try to, at least. I think we're all human, still take some things personally.
Yeah, it's a hard mix of art and commerce. Totally. And many artists have that. You have that because it's literally your baby, and it is created from your heart and from your head. And when someone doesn't agree with you, it's not always a welcome feeling, right? It's not always something you can fully embrace. So tell us about what challenges you've had to overcome in the beginning. So, and maybe not as far back as 7 years old, but think about the whole journey for you as you started to really look at this as your lifelong career, your lifelong endeavor.
Yeah. I think I've certainly had to face many challenges. When you start to pursue something so seriously from a young age, there's definitely a lot of sacrifices you have to make. Like, for example, I had to dedicate a certain amount of time to practicing in order to have the confidence to go on stage and do the contests or events that I was doing. So, dedicating a lot of time to that. And even just, I had gigs as early as like 9 years old. So I didn't always have a summer. I was out performing. And I think, certain sacrifices with friends, and even, one of my more recent ventures, moving down to LA, I was in a long distance relationship with my boyfriend, now my husband, which was certainly challenging. So I think, there's lots of relationship sacrifices, in your personal life where you're putting out a lot more into the world than I'm not necessarily that much of an extrovert. So, to have the confidence to do that has been something that I've grown into enjoying. So there's been lots of different kind of challenges throughout the years, but the early ones would just be, not getting to hang out with my friends or my boyfriend.
Yeah, no, fair enough. And that's a pressure that not a lot of people will put themselves through in order to get through to the other end and to keep pushing, because you're not talking about, a couple of weeks of sacrifice. This is years of this type of thing. And like you say, to be able to have the confidence to go on stage and perform the way you want to takes all that practice behind the scenes and all those hours behind the scenes that people don't see.
Totally.
and the roller coaster that you go through internally.
Yeah.
So talk about your support system around that. So your family, for example, some people, they don't have a family that supports their dreams and
Yeah.
supports their ambitions. So let's talk about your family. I know you come from a really diverse, multicultural background, which you wouldn't know ethnicity wise looking at you, but tell us about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, I just posted something on my TikTok about this because I've always found it interesting. Like, I think Canadians in general, we all have a little bit of an interesting background. There's been lots of mixing or people coming over from other places. And so I thought that would be something cool to kind of share my story, because I do feel like mine gets a little complicated, especially because I do come from a history of performers. So my great grandparents performed in India in a band, and they lived in hotels and they kind of moved around. So it is, that sort of helped the mix a bit, I guess, as well. And I feel really grateful to have come from such a diverse background. We would have big family parties growing up, and these would be some of the first places that I would perform. I can remember I opened for one of my cousin's bands in the backyard at my grandparents' house. And, my cousin's band was doing quite well in Calgary, so it was kind of a big deal. And I think I did like a Spice Girls song or something. I would have been, 9, 10. So I have all these great memories of growing up with, just lots of family around, lots of music, lots of entertainment. And I've been incredibly blessed to have such an incredible support system. My mom is a painter. She's an artist. My dad is in the creative world. He does all my web development and that kind of stuff. So I'm really lucky to have a family of creatives who also easily support me. Like, it's not easy being supportive to somebody who is putting so much out there, and and sometimes things aren't guaranteed. Like, this is such a, I don't know if risky is the right word, but it's not a set in stone career to go down. So I feel so grateful to have a family who, the multicultural background shaped me to want to pursue it as a career, and then, to have the family that actually backs me up in that and, supports me in any way they can. I'm truly grateful.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it's so important. And it's a shame when people don't have it, but to have it at the level you have, you're just literally surrounded by it. And I know your younger sister has been there every step of the way too, and pushing you in a different way, right? So you certainly have had such a great support system. And you're absolutely right. This is not always a tangible success. It doesn't always, the outcome does not always come back to you in ways that can be measured.
Yeah.
So that's tough for, the family, the parents. Like, I'm picturing, I heard this story years ago where you used to perform, you've done many gigs, performed all over the place. And I remember you had this gig at Heritage Park during Christmas.
Right.
So here in Calgary, it can get, this Christmas wasn't, but it can be very, very cold, very snowy. And I can picture, I wasn't there, I didn't see this, but I've heard the story where I can picture your mom there in the snowstorm. You were, I don't know, tell us about that one. You know which one I'm talking about, right?
I do, yeah. And it's because my mom loves to tell this story of just, she's been there through thick and thin. And because she really has, I mean, anyone who knows my mom knows she hates the cold. She would rather be in Hawaii or Mexico or anywhere warm. I guess who can blame her? But I was performing at Heritage Park, and it was the middle of a huge Calgary blizzard, and I was still out there performing, doing my Christmas songs, and she was the only one standing there, pelted by snow, just coming right at her face, and she stood there and just bared it like a champion. So I'm very, very lucky to have, a family who is that sort to that level. Cause I'm not sure if I would have done that. I probably would have hidden and gotten a coffee.
That's very true. You got to hand it to her. You got to hand it to her. So let's switch gears a bit, because this fascinates me. And I think you and I have had this conversation before. I don't remember where, but take us through your creative process. So when you're thinking about, people say, oh, I'm going to start writing. or I'm going to, you know, make an album or a song or whatever. What does that look like? Do the lyrics come first? Does the melody come first? Like, take us through your process.
Sure, yeah. I think it's different for everybody in the every artist and songwriter. But for me, usually what happens is like I'll get a little melody or a hook idea in my head. So maybe it's just like the title of a song, and I think it should be like, you know, a little melody idea. And I'll, you know, if I'm driving, I'll safely pull over and quickly record it on my phone and jot down, you know, whatever I can remember of the lyrics. Inspiration has hit me like in the shower, so soaking wet, I have to grab my phone and sing into it just to get that idea out. And then there's also a lot of time that I spend more in a structured way where I'm dedicating, you know, a few hours out of the day to try to songwrite. I try to be kind to myself in that process, because if an idea doesn't just happen, that's okay. And I kind of move on, and there's other things that I can work on. And I've also been doing a ton of co-writing, which has been really incredible, because sometimes, you know, some days you have an off day and your ideas aren't sparking, but when you have another creative mind or two other minds in the room, and not in the room lately, it's all been sort of like this in a Zoom call or on FaceTime, but usually, you know, their ideas can spark more creative ideas out of you. And I've really enjoyed that process.
Yeah, collaboration is super important. And I wanted to talk to you about that, because I know you've always done a lot of that, but especially during COVID, a lot of people, a lot of businesses, a lot of just individuals have completely just shut down. It's hard. Yeah. This is different. It's difficult. You know, you're in a business where technology and going digital is easier in a lot of ways than some, but you know, talk to me about how you powered through. Like, what happened last March? Pandemic hits. You're in the middle of performing live in various places, and now it's like done.
Dead. Yeah.
So, how did that affect you?
It's greatly affected me. And, you know, the whole industry, my heart just breaks when I think of the event industry as a whole. I think there's tons of industries that are really struggling through this. But the event industry in particular has just been, you know, there's no way we can have events right now. So I feel truly heartbroken for all of the people whose, you know, lives that relied on that. And on a personal note, all my bread and butter kind of came from performing at events or performing live. So without that revenue stream, it's been really challenging to put money back into my art. But I'm trying to remain positive, and I've tried to learn new skills during this time where I am kind of stuck at home. So for example, I rented a bunch of gear from Long and McQuaid, a really nice vocal mic, and I'm learning how to record my own vocals so that that's, you know, it's not only an expense that I can take out of what the recording process is, it's also I'm able to be more precise about it and get exactly the vocal takes that I want. And so I have a more control over the art that I'm able to put out. So, you know, I think it's certainly been a challenging time, but I'm also grateful that it's sort of forced me to have more time for things like learning that or for co-writing. And I think one of the hardest things is trying to remain motivated. And I think probably all entrepreneurs are feeling that way at this time. It's heavy, it's hard. We're in the middle of a global pandemic. It's not an easy time. So trying to, you know, continue to motivate yourself through that time is challenging. But I think, you know, having support of, for me, the Alberta music community has been incredible. And even, you know, coming on shows like today, you know, talking with other people and, you know, just having positive conversations, I think it can kind of keep you going. So.
Yeah, no, for sure. And it's, I lost my train of thought in, you know, the co-writing and bringing the collaboration is obviously really hard to do via video, but you have worked really hard this last year since this hit in 2020, because you're achieving some great success, and, you know, you're nominated for a pretty big award. So tell us about that, and how did that come to be, given the fact that you haven't performed live, I don't think, in coming up to a year, probably, right?
Yeah. Well, I was lucky at, you know, some point in the maybe right after summer, I did sneak in one very controlled COVID friendly gig at the King Eddie, which was huge. Just like to be able to just get out and perform with a band and even, you know, from a distance see all of those people again. It was like kind of right in the middle of all of this, and it was just enough to kind of keep you going.
Yeah, a little glimpse of hope in there.
Totally. And then, you know, we shut back down and it was but you know, I was really grateful for that. But yeah, you know, I think I'm very anxious to get back out and get performing. But yeah, there's lots that we can still do kind of at home. And this award, for example, you know, we're going completely virtual with the Alberta Country Music Awards. And I feel incredibly honored to be nominated for the Horizon Female Artist of the Year. I'm nominated alongside some other incredible country artists who are working super hard. And women who've won this title in the past, for example, Lindsay Ell, Tenille Townes, they've gone on to do some incredible things. So I feel like I'm in really great company, and it's been motivating to have that kind of recognition and acknowledgement for my hard work. And I'm just honored to be included in this community. I think right now we really, really need community, and I'm super grateful to be part of this. So.
Yeah, no, it's true. We do. We need community more than ever. And, you know, it's reciprocal, Alex, because you've been in the community, you've been that supportive person for years. I've seen it. I've seen you there. So to have that recognition and acknowledgement for what you do and your talent, let's not leave out the, you know, incredible immense talent that you have. So I'm thrilled for you. I'm so excited. And so when can we watch that? It'll be online, obviously. And that was end of February, right?
Yeah, it'll be February 28th. And yeah, I'll make sure to post about that all over my social media and everywhere. And yeah, it's going to be a great show. I'm really looking forward to it.
We're excited. And we put all the comments below here after we get off, and we'll make sure and note that date here in our comments as well. So let's back up a second, because you mentioned the King Eddie. So these are some pretty iconic venues. And I know you've performed in other, you know, really historic, iconic venues like the House of Blues on Sunset Boulevard, because you spent some time in LA, which you mentioned earlier. Tootsie's in Nashville. You performed at Tootsie's. I mean, I've been to the House of Blues in LA. Incredible. It's not there anymore.
Right.
Yeah, it's gone. Tootsie's in Nashville. I've been there too. Fantastic venue. And then, of course, Calgary Stampede, the Coca-Cola stage, and the King Eddie. So what's it like being able to say, you know, then looking when you were in Nashville, for example, or where you at the House of Blues, what's that like to be able to say, I performed there?
It's pretty incredible. And I feel really grateful because you only get to perform at those types of places with the support and help of others. Like, you know, somebody introduced me to somebody, we made a connection, and in combination with my hard work, I guess, in pursuing that, I've been able to perform at some of these places. So I really feel it's an honor, and I'm so proud to be able to say that I've performed at some of these places. And especially, I actually didn't know that the House of Blues was gone. So to be able to say that I've done it before it shut down is kind of a big deal. I think there's one of my favorite artists, Eva Cassidy, she performed a show there, and I watched that show and I get so inspired by it. So the day that I performed there, I just felt like one of my absolute idols performed there. I couldn't have been more honored. So it's been a really fun journey, and things like those performances are the things that keep you going, because, you know, it's motivating to be able to achieve some of the goals that you've had.
Yeah, you're right. It is inspiring along the way to sort of realize, you know, when you're in the moment, you don't always know that, but reflecting back, you can kind of say, you know, another sort of bucket list or another dream, part of the dream, you know, realized, which is fantastic. And it is closed down. However, you can be one of the people that says, I performed there, which is pretty incredible. And so let's talk a little bit about your time in LA. You moved down there with your family. You were a teenager, you know, or late teens.
Yeah.
And, so tell us about when you moved there, why you moved there, and how did that go? Like, who moves to LA to pursue their singing career with their entire family?
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. I love talking about it because I think it is so interesting and surprising. Like, not a lot of people have gone and done that. And I'm really incredibly lucky to have a family that wanted to come down with me, because truthfully, LA is like a little bit of a ruthless world. So to have that kind of protection and support while I was there was incredible. I went down to pursue working with a producer named Walter Afanasieff. So he produced songs like My Heart Will Go On from the Titanic. He's the co-writer and producer of All I Want for Christmas Is You, which is, I think, like one of the highest selling and performing songs of all time. So this was obviously an opportunity that we couldn't pass up. And I learned so much moving down there, I think, and it's certainly shaped a huge part of who I am today as well. I think I learned what I wanted and I learned what I didn't want. I think LA as a city for a young person is really challenging. I found it, when I was trying to make genuine friends, a lot of them would sort of wait to hear who I was working with and then decide whether or not they wanted to be my friends. So I found that challenging coming from Alberta, where I do feel like we're more genuine people here. So that was certainly an adjustment. But I ended up making really great lifelong friendships. For example, one of the other artists I met down there, Shannon MacArthur, we just released a song together back in November. And it was a song that we wrote while I was down there. So I think, if you can make great friendships anywhere. And I feel like I was lucky to make a great connection with Walter as well. I didn't end up releasing any of the music that we did down there. And it was solely because I was in a pop world trying to do country music, and there was just something not quite locking in together. But what I will say is especially now that I've started to try to figure out how to record all my own vocals, I learned a ton from that experience. I got to work with one of the best vocal producers of all time. He's worked with Celine Dion, Mariah Carey, women with these incredible voices, and he knows how to record them. And I didn't even realize it almost till now, how much I learned from him. So I count myself incredibly blessed to have had that experience, and it's obviously a very unique experience. And I just think, I got to perform at some incredible places, meet a lot of really cool people, and it's just a really great part of my journey.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's exactly what it is, part of the journey. And this is so interesting. And this is a bit of a stretch, but I'm gonna connect the dots here. So that was years ago, many years ago, that you did that work with Walter, and that, him being an incredible success story in his own right. Mm-hmm. Now here you are, because of the pandemic, decided to rent the equipment and do your own vocals. And now looking back to what he taught you is years now coming to fruition, that I'm going to go out and say this probably wouldn't have happened without the pandemic. True?
100%, yeah. And I don't think I would go back to recording the other way. Like, I love having that creative control. And also nobody knows, like, I know my voice better than anyone else would, just like, anyone else would know their own craft better than another person. So I know that sometimes I really like the way my voice sounds first thing in the morning. It's not perfect. It's not perfectly warmed up. But when I get right up close to a mic and I'm singing the words softly, I feel like there's so much more character to it. And those are things that I can, put into my music that I probably wouldn't have been able to do, just because when you go into the studio to record, it's an incredible experience, but you're in a crunched amount of time. So if I'm having an off day, I'm paying to be there. So I have to crush out the vocals. Whereas, at home, I can pick the best day, pick the best time. And I've really enjoyed experimenting with that and learning about my voice and figuring that all out. And you're absolutely right. I wouldn't have done that without, the current situation. And I wouldn't have realized how much I learned from Walter. And I knew I did, but it was like all kind of sitting there in my subconscious, these particular skills with vocal recording, like, knowing how many different tracks I need to do and this and that, and little things that all of a sudden clicked. I feel really
Mhm.
grateful that I've sort of discovered that thanks to the current situation.
Yeah, isn't it just incredible? And you know, the practical application just came together in this perfect storm, or not so perfect
Right.
storm, but at this time because of the circumstances. So here's another great example of the fact that there are opportunities out there during this, and you got to keep going, right? Sure,
Mhm.
you're pivoting, which you did, but now look, and like you say, you may not, in some capacity, go back to recording in another way.
Right.
Um, in the old way. So it's incredible. So I'm so glad we touched on that, because
Yeah.
it's true in anything, right? There's always another way. There's
Yeah.
always another way. There's another way through or over or around, and you know, to get to something more or something better, something undiscovered. So that's really cool. So you obviously love what you do. You still love what you do. It's been many, many years later. And I love asking this question of artists, of entrepreneurs, of business people. So what do you love most about what you do? And what drives you?
I feel like this is the perfect segue because, especially maybe it's also because right now this is what I'm able to do, but I love the voice as an instrument. I'm just fascinated by it. And I really feel like I've been able to discover parts of my voice that I didn't even know were there. And, I think that that's what I love most about making music is sharing my voice and, emoting things through it. I also love songwriting and sharing stories and songs.
Mm,
But what drives me is taking those I guess you would maybe say gifts that I have and giving those to others because that's why we do it. I want to relate to
mm,
others and share these stories and these songs and my voice to make them feel things like, make them feel joy,
mhm.
make them feel happy, make them feel, maybe help them when they're going through something. So that's kind of what drives me is being able to share all of these things with others.
I love that. Um, because you have to have something more in order to keep going through all of this and through all of the challenges. And I know for me personally, music has been a big part of that. And you can always remember back to a time in your life when whatever was going on, and music has a way of getting to you in that way. Like I love music for that. I'll go back to many years ago. You'll hear a song and you'll remember the time, right? And it
Absolutely.
can be very healing. It can be very unifying. It can be uplifting and joyful, and it's very, very powerful artistry.
Mm-hmm.
So we certainly need a lot more people like you that have that intent behind what you do. So um, couple more questions here before we wrap it up. So this one is something I always ask entrepreneurs, and this is a bit different for you because you're more of a inspirational artist, right? You are an entrepreneur because you've done this business by yourself. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
So what advice would you give to aspiring artists who have, big dreams?
It's funny you asked this. This is a great question, and I sort of have changed my answer from answers I've given in the past. I just did a radio interview maybe about a week ago, and something clicked in my mind, and I had a memory. So I remembered many years ago, I got to go to a Tim McGraw concert in Edmonton, and there was a VIP show for 30 guests who got to go listen to Tim McGraw, just him and his acoustic guitar, right before the full stadium concert. And there was a question and answer period. So I put up my hand and I asked, same question, what advice do you have for somebody who wants to pursue a career in the music industry? And he said, looked at me dead in the eyes and said, you're going to have to be a little crazy. and then he,
Wow.
yeah. And then he continued to say, because it's a hard journey. So you need to love it more than anything else to want to pursue it seriously and to this level because of all the sacrifices you'll have to make. Otherwise, there are probably other things that you can do and you'll be content in life. So I thought that was kind of, I had this memory recently, just, he was right. The older I get, the more I realize it's constant work, but if you love it enough, you want to do it. And that's why I do it. So I thought that was good advice. So I'm just resharing his advice, I guess.
Yeah, it's excellent advice, especially in an industry and a chosen field, a chosen craft craft like yours. So, and we're sure grateful that you did continue and are continuing. So we're looking forward to really great things in the future. So tell us about what we can look forward to from you in 2021.
Yeah. So I've conceptualized an album, and I won't dive too deep into what it's about because I am kind of trying to keep it a bit of a surprise. But I do have that project in the works, and the hope is to have that released before the end of 2021, as well as a couple more singles sort of leading up to that. So my main goal for this next year moving forward is just to continue sharing music, and in whatever capacity that may be. So I hope to get out to do live gigs. I don't have one on the horizon because the world is still shut down. So just continue working away at home and releasing music and sharing stories and songs.
Okay, exciting. A surprise album in the works.
Yeah.
I'm super excited. I do subscribe to you on every platform that you are available. So tell us where's your preferred, like where can people find you? Where's your preferred method for everyone to connect with you?
Oh, thank you for asking, and thank you for following. The biggest place would be streaming services, so Spotify or Apple Music if you have either of those. If you can give me a follow, that's really huge for artists. The single press of a button is a really big deal for us in getting our music further. So if you like country music, make sure you give me a follow there. And then I try to keep updated with everything that's going on social media. So I'm a little bit more active on Instagram, but you can also find me on Facebook sharing all of my journey, and more recently on TikTok for the weirder content if anyone's into that. So you can find me everywhere.
Okay, and you know what? I am on TikTok, so I will definitely check you out there. I'm on it, but I'm not on it. So,
right.
but Spotify, you're always on my number one playlist. So I'm excited, and I want everyone to understand, like what you just said, in just a follow helps, right? It really helps.
It really does.
This is something that we should all be doing to support each other. And myself and here at Style Labs, we will certainly be in your corner, cheering you on and supporting you along the way. And we look forward to watching what happens in 2021.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for sharing your vulnerability with us, your journey, because I know it hasn't been easy, but it sure has been worthwhile, I would say.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, and thank you so much for having me today. This was lots of fun.
I'd love to have you back when 2021, when you release the album or whatever comes your way in 2021, we'll have you back again and give everyone an update. So thanks everyone for joining us, and we will see you next Friday.